Jesus plus nothing, 100% natural, no additives. Andrew Farley celebrating your freedom in Christ. Call in and ask your questions at 877-655-6755. That's toll free at 877-655-6755. Via satellite from Texas, it's Andrew Farley Live.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to Andrew Farley Live. This is Andrew, and we are live for the next half hour, taking your calls across the United States and Canada. That number, 877-655-6755. We've got open lines here at the top of the hour. Plenty of room for you to get in with your question tonight. If you've got a question about a scripture passage, maybe there's something that you heard in church recently and you're not sure about it, or perhaps there's a personal problem going on in your life right now and you're looking for that grace-based perspective. Well, let's talk it over. Let's make it a conversation together right now. 877-655-6755. Again, open lines, very little wait for you tonight. If you're a first-time caller, please know we love to hear from our first-time callers. We'd love to hear from you. And if you're a veteran listener, maybe you've called in the past, but you've got a new question tonight, by all means, join us as well. Again, that number with open lines, 877-655-6755. Let's start out in Fort Lauderdale, Florida, and we'll talk with Jamal. Hey, Jamal.
Hi, Pastor Farley. How are you?
I'm doing great, sir. How are you doing?
Very well, very well. Thank you again for all your teachings. I literally preach. I'm starting to preach it every Sunday at my church. So
awesome.
Thank you so much. Quick question. This has always bothered me from a kid and even till now. Just wanted to get your grace-based perspective on Hebrews 12:1.
Okay.
Us laying aside the weight and the sin that so easily besets us. And I always wanted to know, what is this sin and what is this weight? You know, if grace is going to supply us with the ability to lay it aside, then what is it that we're laying aside? What is this weight? What is this sin? So I just always wanted to,
Sure.
Definitely an answer regarding that.
Okay. All right, Jamal. Well, first of all, we're in the book of Hebrews, and as you know, that book is written to Hebrews. It's not written to Gentiles. It's written to Jews. And for 10 chapters straight, plus you could say even 11 is all about faith, and 12 now we're seeing something here about sin and discipline. But, the only kind of sin mentioned there in these chapters, from chapter 1 all the way up to this moment, is the sin of unbelief. And that's really important to recognize. That is the Jewish sin that they need to lay aside. That is the issue that is at the forefront. Sure, some of them might be lying and cheating and stealing, but at the core, what he's dealt with for nearly a dozen chapters is the sin of unbelief. And so in chapter 3, he talks about the Israelites long ago wallowing in the desert because of their sin of unbelief. Then in Hebrews 4, he says, make every effort to enter God's rest. Don't be like Israel was, and they failed to enter because of their unbelief, their wicked hearts, their unbelieving hearts. And so the only kind of sin mentioned for these chapters is the sin of unbelief. And then you head up to chapter 12 of Hebrews, and he says, let us lay aside every encumbrance and the sin which so easily entangles us, and let us run with endurance the race that is set before us. So can a Christian be tangled up in some sort of outward sin? Of course. I mean, other places in the New Testament it says we all stumble in many ways, the Apostle James writes. Paul says, if anyone is caught in a trespass, you who are spiritual, restore them gently. Be careful lest you too be tempted. So clearly, we Christians can be tempted, and we Christians can be tangled up in a sinful mess. I mean, every Christian out there, at one point or another, we can think of an example where we got caught in something. So, this doesn't mean that we're not forgiven. This doesn't mean that we don't still have new hearts. I mean, of course we have new hearts, and of course we're forgiven, but we're tangled up. I mean, we're tangled up in a circumstance. So primarily, I would look at this as the core issue is unbelief. That's true from Hebrews 1 all the way up to this passage, the sin of unbelief. But second, of course, this could apply to a behavior issue, an attitude issue, an action issue. We all have been caught up in actions that we regret or attitudes that we have remorse over now. So, I don't think in the slightest that it is any threat to the concept of us being under God's grace. In fact, that's how we can lay it aside. How do we lay it aside? We say, I'm dead to it. I am dead to this sin. I am free from this sin. I am not under the power of this sin, and so I'm going to lay it aside. It's like getting dressed in the morning. You lay aside the stuff that doesn't fit, right? If it's too small or too big or it doesn't look right on you, you lay it aside. Well, Paul says, put off bitterness, put off resentment, put on Christ, put on love, put on compassion. So we're putting off stuff that doesn't fit, and we're putting on stuff that does fit, and we should wear things that are fitting for saints. So think of this about laying aside clothing that doesn't fit who you are, and then putting on or wearing stuff that makes you look great. So what should you wear? Well, wake up every day and wear Jesus. Why? Because he's there on the inside anyway. So go ahead and wear stuff that matches who you are at the core. So, Jamal, I hope that helps as you gain perspective on Hebrews 12. It's not some sort of legalistic passage at all. In fact, the very next verse says, fix your eyes on Jesus. So he's the source. He's our life. He's our everything. So let's wear what fits, given that we contain him within us. Thanks again for your call. Reach out anytime. Always great to hear from you, Jamal. 877-655-6755. That is the number. Open lines right now. Plenty of room for you. Okay, let's go now to Georgia, and we'll talk with Lydia. Hi, Lydia.
Hi.
Hi. What's on your heart tonight?
My question was more of a counseling matter. Like,
yes,
if you have, like, when my daughter was staying with us, my husband had no mercy on her. But now that his daughter is staying with us, he wants me to have mercy on her, which to me it destroyed her life. It helped her, but it kind of messed her up. But now that his daughter's in the house, now he wants me to have mercy on her.
Okay, and what do you want to do? Do you want to be unmerciful to her?
No, I don't. I want to have mercy, but it's so hard to forgive him.
Yes, I hear you, Lydia. Okay, so that's the core of this. For this situation, this is the core. You've discovered it in just a couple of sentences there. Number one, you do want to be merciful. Why is that? Well, if Christ lives in you, Lydia, and you've got that new heart, that's going to be a soft heart. It's going to be a loving heart, a merciful heart, a kind heart. That's the heart that you have because God took out your heart of stone and he gave you a new heart. So, that's the evidence right there that you want to, even though your own daughter was mistreated, now you have within your heart the desire to treat his daughter with mercy and grace and kindness and love. That's because you're a new creation, because you're a child of God, because you've got Christ living in you. But you also hit the nail on the head that the issue is forgiveness. I would say that you need to make an appointment with God and sit down with him and just say, Lord, I need 20 minutes of your time, sir, so to speak, and say, I've got some ways that I have been deeply hurt by my husband. For example, he has been mean to my daughter, and it made me feel disrespected, and it made me feel scared, and it made me feel hurt that he would treat her that way, and it did damage to her. And when he hurt my daughter, he hurt me. And so it's deeply painful, Lord, but I choose I choose right now, today. I choose, whether today is Tuesday or Wednesday, I choose this day to forgive him and release him from anything that he owes me. You know what he owes me? He owes me an apology, Lord. He owes me better treatment of my daughter, Lord. He owes me so much, and yet he'll probably never pay those things to me. So I release him from that debt. I forgive him and release him of anything he owes me. And when you do that, Lydia, you're not doing that for your husband's benefit. He may not even know you did it. He may not even ever really understand what you've done for him, but you're doing it for your own benefit. Why? Because of that heart we were talking about just a couple of minutes ago. You've got that new heart, and it's a merciful heart, and it's a loving heart, and it's a forgiving heart. And so you can make an appointment to forgive your husband. You don't have to wait for your feelings. Your feelings are going to be angry. Your feelings are going to be resentful. Your feelings are going to be bitter, but you don't have to let those feelings control you. Lydia, you can make a decision. You can make an appointment with God, sit down with him, and forgive your husband. So does that make sense? Does that register with you that, many times we'll feel like we don't want to forgive, but forgiveness is not a feeling, it's a choice, and it's a choice you could make even this evening or tomorrow as you make that appointment with God. Does that help?
Oh, yeah, that helps.
Okay.
Helps a lot.
Good. Well, go ahead and do that. I encourage you to, Lydia. Don't wait another day. Sit down and process that pain. Write down a list of everything your husband has done and everything that it made you feel, and process that list. Think through it. Don't leave anything out. And then choose to forgive him and release him from anything he owes you. You could tear up that sheet of paper just as a landmark, as a way of remembering your choice, the choice that you made to forgive that debt, release that debt, and say to your husband, essentially, it's like you're saying to him that he doesn't owe you anything. And then that new heart of yours is going to leap with joy. You're going to give thanks that you got to forgive him. And then as you treat his daughter going forward, you're going to be treating her mercifully, because that's what your new heart really desires. So Lydia, I love your question because it just reminds us of our identity. It reminds us that we as believers, we're in Christ, and Christ is in us. And we're not resentful people. We're not bitter people. We're not unkind people. We have a new nature, a new heart, a new spirit, and God's Spirit living in us. So make that appointment right away with God. Just spend 20 minutes writing up your list, and then forgive and release your husband from what he owes you. Thanks for your call. Call us back anytime, Lydia. We'd love to hear from you. 877-655-6755. We'll go now to New Mexico, and we'll talk with John. Hey, John.
Hello. I have a question for you. In Revelation 21:4, John says he sees a vision of a new heaven, singular, and a new earth. Mm-hmm. In Isaiah 65:17, Isaiah says he sees new heavens and a new earth. I want to know why John is using the singular and Isaiah is using the plural.
Okay. All right. Great. Well, first of all, in Revelation 21, verse 4, it says this, that he will wipe away every tear, no more death, no more mourning. The first things have passed away, and it goes on. You're right. It talks about a new heaven and a new earth right there at the beginning of the chapter. The new heaven there has nothing to do with the sky. The new heaven is a new, it means a connection with God, if you will. Heaven, as we know it. The first heaven and the first earth will pass away. I don't know that we understand all of that, but the holy city comes down. And so there's now some sort of connection between new heaven and new earth as the city comes down out of heaven, out of the current heaven. Whereas you go over to Isaiah 65, and what you see there refers to the sky. Anytime we see heavens it's referring to the sky itself. So I would put that under the physical. I would say that's the creation of new heavens, plural, meaning new atmosphere, new galaxy, new universe, new physicality. So while Isaiah is talking about things that are merely physical, heavens and earth, sky and earth, then you pop over to Revelation 21 and it's talking about a spiritual place as well as a physical place. So that's why we have the plural in one case in Isaiah and the singular in Revelation 21. John, I hope that gives some clarity, and reach out to us anytime. Great to hear from you. All right, let's go now to Canada, and we'll talk with Margaret. Hey, Margaret. Hi, Margaret. We don't have you there. Let's see. There we go. Hello, yes. What's on your mind tonight, Margaret?
Well, in my mind is that I have a son that he's with an addiction of gambling, and he's now taking cannabis now that they legalize even more open. So I'm very concerned about this.
Okay. And
I just don't know what to do.
Okay, and is your son a believer? Does he have Christ living in him?
No, not really. He doesn't get to he doesn't really care much about that.
Yeah. And how about you, Margaret? Do you have
I do.
Yeah, okay. All right, well, given that you do, then obviously you know how important it is. You know, our concern for your son, you know, he's spending too much money in gambling, and he's spending money on, you know, I guess you're talking not about medicinal cannabis, but about, you know, smoking pot, that sort of thing, with the chemicals in it that give a high. So, I mean, that's where he's spending his money. He's spending his money on that. He's spending his money on gambling, and you're worried about him. You're worried about his choices. You're worried about his circumstances that he's in. But then we take a step back and we see that, you know, God's first concern is not gambling or even a drug use. But God's first concern is that he come to know Jesus. That he come to know Jesus as Savior and Lord, and what it means to have Jesus Christ living in him as his life. So I think that perhaps he might enjoy a book that I have called Relaxing with God. If he's open to reading that at any point, I think you should read it first and see if you enjoy it, and then recommend it to him and give it to him as a gift. Here we're coming up on Thanksgiving and Christmas, and it's a great opportunity to give gifts. So I don't have a magic wand here that I could wave over your son and boom, no more addiction, no more gambling, no more cannabis use. I'm sure you knew that when you called in, but what I do have is access to an incredible message that has freed many people from addictions of all kinds. And it's all about being indwelt by Jesus and opening the door of our lives and inviting him in. So I want to send this to you, Margaret. It's a book called Relaxing with God. And, you know, speaking of cannabis, you know, many people turn to that as a way of trying to relax. Well, this book is about relaxing with God. And so maybe it will attract his attention. Maybe it will be something he's interested in looking at. But hang on the line there. Don't go anywhere, and we'll put this resource in your hands. You read it, see if you benefit from it, and then pass it along to him and see what he thinks of it. It may hit the spot for him, whether now or at the right time in the future. Sometimes we try to help people when they don't want help. And we have to wait and be patient and be discerning and pray for them, because at the right time they may be seeking the help that we have to offer. So don't go anywhere. Hang on the line there, Margaret, and we'll get this out to you right away. This book is called Relaxing with God, and in fact, right now, this month only, for the next couple of weeks, it is 99 cents on Kindle, on Amazon Kindle. So if you've been thinking about getting one of my books, maybe you've been listening to this broadcast a few times or a few weeks or a few months, and you want to sort of sink your teeth into the message more deeply, well, you can do that with the book Relaxing with God. Right now it's 99 cents on Amazon Kindle. That is a special that the publisher runs at their discretion, and they've chosen to do this, a very rare opportunity to get the book that cheaply. So go to Amazon.com and click on or type in Relaxing with God. Look for the Kindle edition. It's 99 cents. But Margaret, we're going to send you one for free, and it'll be a paper edition, paperback book, so that you can read it and pass it along. Again, that book, Relaxing with God. All right, well, let's go now to Toronto, Canada, and we'll talk with Atwilla. Hi, Atwilla.
Hi, how are you?
Hey, good. What's on your heart tonight, Atwilla?
Okay. I listen to a lot of theologians when they're preachers, okay? And remember that God said, if one of my word pass, heaven and earth pass. Now, they said a lot of theologians are saying that the Ten Commandments was made for the Jew, which is not true. It was made for every human being from the day it was created, okay? The Bible said, remember. God said, remember. Remember means do not forget. It didn't say remember to the Jews or the Gentiles. It said remember the Sabbath day to keep it holy. 6 days I shall labor and do all thy work. Okay? Christ came to, when he died, he came to fulfill but not to destroy. Revelation means
okay,
things to come.
So do you have a question?
The question, why people like worship God when God said, why you just assemble yourself on honor the Sabbath day? Why they not keep the Sabbath day on the Saturday?
Okay, all right. Well, they don't keep it because we're not under it, and some of the stuff you're saying is not accurate. You're absolutely right that the Ten Commandments is for the whole world, but it's for the whole unsaved world. You're right that the whole law is for the whole world in a sense, because Romans tells us that the righteous requirements of the law are written on the Gentile conscience. So if we're talking about literal tablets of stone or scrolls or the Torah, no, Ephesians tells us in chapter 1 and 2, Ephesians says that we had, as Gentiles, we had no hope, we had no covenant, and we were excluded from the commonwealth of Israel. So I'm going to give you, if you're truly interested in the truth about this, I'm going to give you some passages that you can look at and see what you think, because some of the things you're saying are not accurate. So Ephesians chapter 2, verse 12, it says that we Gentiles, we were separate from Christ, excluded from the commonwealth of Israel, strangers to the covenants, having no hope and without God in this world. That's Ephesians 2:12, which says Gentiles had no covenant. All right, secondly, you said that the Ten Commandments were for the whole world. I'm assuming you're including believers in that. Well, 2 Corinthians 3:9 contradicts what you said. 2 Corinthians 3:9 says there is a ministry engraved on letters of stone that is a ministry of condemnation and death, and that there's a greater ministry. So what's the only ministry that was written on stone? It was the Ten Commandments, not the ceremonial law, not the sacrificial law, but the Ten Commandments were written on stone. 2 Corinthians 3:9 says that that is a ministry of condemnation and death, and that there's a greater ministry for us today called the New Covenant. I draw your attention to Romans 7:8. It says, apart from the law, sin is dead. What law is in context there? Thou shalt not covet is the context. Coveting, thou shalt not covet, is one of the Ten Commandments, and Paul is advising us to live apart from the law so that sin is dead. If we live under the Ten Commandments, we can expect coveting of every kind, just as Paul did. Lastly, concerning the Sabbath itself, a quick trip over to Colossians 2 tells us that the Sabbath day was just a shadow, not the reality. Therefore, Colossians 2:16 says, don't let anybody act as your judge in regard to a Sabbath day. So I would say, my friend, that you've got some thinking to do. I think you've been mistaught in some ways, and I encourage you to look up those scriptures. The truth will always set you free.
For more information on Andrew's books, please visit andrewfarley.org. That's andrewfarley.org. Join us every week at this time as we invite you to celebrate the freedom of God's grace. Goodbye, everybody.